Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Ukrainian Talk Show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and today we have guest Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here as always.
My pleasure. And Ivan Kucherenko from Kiev, Ukraine. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Hello, Sasha. Hello, Jonathan. Hello to everyone.
Great to have you, Ivan. So the things starting moving in the right direction.
Yes, indeed.
And what the most important thing is that majority of the weapons that Ukraine is getting as a result of this package, they are already in Poland and Germany.
They're forward stage. They're
Very
ready.
short distance to get them to Ukraine.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of one of those old American Western cowboy movies where the cowboys are in a desperate situation and suddenly the U.S. cavalry comes riding over the hill just in the nick of time to save our heroes. And that just put the Ukrainians in the place of the cowboys. And here comes the U.S. Congress, like the cavalry, just in the nick of time, just barely in time. Well, the Ukrainians should tell the U.S. Congress next time, try not to make it so exciting. we would like it. We would like a little bit of comfort level here. Yeah, But this, as I pointed out in the show yesterday, that this is a perfect example of the U.S. checks and balances system in operation. The founding fathers designed the American political system to work in precisely this way. As James Madison put it, ambition must be made to counteract ambition. So that designed it so that the U.S. system could not, except in very rare circumstances, move swiftly in response to any international or, for that matter, national situation, so as to minimize the possibility of tyranny taking over. Now, I would also argue that the U.S. checks and balances system is being put to one of its ultimate tests in the current political situation. The checks and balances are being violently shaken, and the outcome of that will be shown in this November's elections. So in any case, but fortunately, the U.S. checks and balances system operated the way the founding fathers made it do it. And compromise, in the American sense, of each party getting something of what they wanted, took place here. Aid is being passed and sent to Ukraine, to Israel, to Taiwan. Each party in this is getting something that they want. And not necessarily as quickly as they would want, but they are getting it. So now the issue turns upon the skill of the Ukrainian military and political leadership to take maximum advantage of what they are getting, to be able to and there are increasing indications we've discussed about how the Ukrainians have the opportunity to inflict a decisive counterstroke in the theater, particularly with regard to control of the Crimea. And more analysts are recognizing that this potential exists. And even the Ukrainian leadership is talking about in ways in taking decisive action in Crimea and in severing the logistical and reinforcement link between Russia and Crimea. All of this is coming to a head, and I predict that we will see that decisive counterstroke in the summer months, preempting, I would predict, any new Russian attempt at a summer offensive.
Excellent, Jonathan. Thank you. Ivan, do you have a video for us?
I just wanted to add that what is important that at least we are hoping to receive this help, those weapons, despite all the efforts which Russia put to stop that help from the United States and other countries, especially in terms of Western weapons. And we've covered how Russian propaganda works on our previous shows. And today I want to show you a video regarding this particular case, which efforts Russia tried to implement in order to stop this bill and to prevent Western countries, including the United States, from helping Ukraine in our fight against Russian invasion. So let's watch it now.
Disinformation work. Let's take a quick look at the Kremlin's campaign against Ukraine. Called the Black Hole and aimed at disrupting Western aid, it was 100% fake. It had a specific time frame, propaganda channels, and consisted of several phases. Phase 1. Creating a false narrative, not supported by evidence. To do this, the Kremlin perverted the news about Western aid by using the phrase "a black hole," with reference to Ukraine. Then the fake news was spread via FSB-affiliated social media and official Russian channels. In this way, the Kremlin sought to form a solid anti-Ukrainian narrative and warm up the audience for further manipulation. Phase 2. Fabricating evidence to support the narrative. To keep its manipulation going, Moscow created a video comparing President Zelensky to that same black hole, as if it had been filmed in Times Square in New York City, and applied a fake watermark from Fox News Digital to make a video look more credible. The falsified material was then disseminated via those same Russian private media channels, and public including the Russian embassies. So both bots and foreign media could pick up the fake news and make it go viral. Phase 3. Faking events that never happened to validate the campaign. For example, sharing photos of graffiti depicting Zelensky and the same black hole as if they were taken in many European and American cities. The graffiti never really existed.
No one reports seeing it in real life.
Though for those who swallowed the news, the whole campaign looked authentic and solidified the discredited image of Ukraine made by Russia. The total number of views the Black Hole campaign gained reached over 6 million. This is just one among many campaigns by Russia in Ukraine, Europe, the US, and the rest of the world.
Это наше самое главное оружие.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what we are facing, and that's really what it is. And they're penetrating almost any system, even Congress of United States. There are a lot of people in Congress that are operating by Putin's demology and
Disinformation, yes.
it's clear disinformation, and it's effective. It's working.
So somewhere disinformation, somewhere probably they are directly bribed by Russian security services. Now when you can pay anyone with crypto money and which are almost impossible to track, anyone actually can be bribed. You never know which senator or congressman or congresswoman is bribed by Russia, and but you can discover it by analyzing what they're saying and if their statements confirm Russian narratives. A great example is with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who actually transferred the same narratives as Russian propaganda does about some bio laboratories in Ukraine, and in order to get those help from United States, Ukraine, in her opinion, had to close all those bio laboratories. First of all, we have to open them in order to close. But this is what Russian propaganda says, and people just compare the narratives of Russian propaganda and narratives of your congressman or your congresswoman or your senators, and next time when you will vote for them, consider giving your vote, because then this senator can be bribed by Russia and spread Russian propaganda, Chinese propaganda, Northern Korean propaganda, or someone else who will pay the more for it.
Even during the Cold War, arguably the most successful Soviet propaganda campaign was when then President Jimmy Carter proposed deploying the so-called neutron bomb into NATO's forces in Western Europe. Now, the neutron bomb by itself was an enhanced radiation weapon, basically low kiloton or sub-kiloton, designed to have most of its energy released in prompt radiation rather than blast and heat, in order to make a more effective response to any Soviet invasion of Western Europe, West Germany, with large conventional forces. And that was the intent. Prompt killing radiation rather than destruction of buildings or with large amounts of fallout. The Soviets, Russians countered this. They declared the neutron bomb to be the perfect capitalist weapon. Perfect capitalist weapon. Destroys people but leaves property intact. They followed that propaganda line and used their shall we say, their useful idiots in the West to forward that line, and applied enough public pressure so that President Carter eventually decided not to deploy the neutron bomb in West Germany. Now, that arguably was a victory, although not necessarily a decisive one, but it is an example of how the Russians have carried over those lessons from the Cold War and are very skillful, admittedly, in using disinformation and propaganda to attempt to manipulate the perceptions of their opponents.
Actually, the more I think about it, the neutron bomb is a very effective device.
Oh, yes.
It destroys your enemies. It leaves property intact. People are not burning alive.
Right.
What's so wrong about the neutron bomb?
Our problem was we did not push our side of the narrative effectively enough to counter this Russian propaganda. And so we were not used to that. So, but as Mark Twain once said, a lie can be halfway around the world before the truth even gets its boots on.
Well, he has a lot of fascinating sayings.
Mark Twain had many fascinating sayings. One of my favorites is, history doesn't repeat itself. It does rhyme, though.
Yeah, fantastic. So what else is interesting, that Russian propaganda is furious about this latest package approved in the United States. I saw an interview by Peskov. He's getting crazy about that.
Don't you love it?
Emotions. And what else is interesting, I never found anywhere restrictions on use of these new weapons that are coming to Ukraine. So what's happened to that? So now they can use potentially ATACMS to destroy Kremlin if they wanted to.
They are giving Ukraine permission to take the gloves off.
It's about time. Also, I think, of course, by delaying package for so long, U.S. lost the moral authority to tell Ukrainians what weapons they can use against Russian targets and what not, and what are the Russian targets to attack and what not to attack. I think it's gone by now.
What Ukraine is now saying is give us the weapons, we'll figure out how to use them.
Absolutely. So that's what's going to happen the next, basically, probably in a week time, if not earlier, we will see something will change on the front lines. And while the Ukrainians were waiting this package for a month, 6 months or so, Russians didn't make a lot of progress on a battlefield. Oh, they took Avdiivka after 6 or even 9 months. Okay, is it done that? What else?
Yeah, that's about the equivalent of like Verdun in the First World War. Yeah. Okay, you took it, but at what cost?
And what exactly the cost and time that they had to invest into it, and human lives, and so. We're talking about a situation where there are already well over 500,000 people on both sides are being killed, and I suspect that about 300,000 on the Russian side, if not more. So this losses They're incomparable. In Russia, probably lost that amount of human beings since
In
Second World
Stalingrad, in the Battle of Stalingrad alone.
Stalingrad alone. Yeah, but Stalingrad, it was peak of German campaign to Soviet
Right.
Union.
It
And
represented they're the furthest advance they had ever made into Russia.
absolutely. And if you look at another big war that Russians fought in Afghanistan, they lost 15,000 men in a matter of 9 years. How you
But
compare this?
Sasha, it were official information, and I just want you to remember that at that time the Soviet Union was mostly in full power, and they controlled all the media. So you will never get any real numbers of how many people, Soviet soldiers, including Ukrainians, died in Afghanistan. It's
I,
like their official data now, which they're saying that they lost in Ukraine a couple thousand people, not more. So it's Russia actually never cares about people, about population. You've probably seen the information about those floods, major floods in Russia, and the entire cities and regions in Russia are flooded, including the Orsk city, and this is the cause of lack of investments into civil infrastructure. Those dams made of actually not concrete, but made of pure earth, of dirt. They're being flooded and washed away by the increase in water. And what is remarkable, there is no National Guard, no their internal forces assisting civilian population in these floods. Because when in the United States there was a flood in New Orleans, the National Guard immediately arrived there in order to assist the civil population, to evacuate them, to prevent marauding, etc. And in Russia, the National Guards are not there. They're all on the battlefield, and they're busy with killing peaceful Ukrainian instead of protecting peaceful Russians. So here in Ukraine, we actually hope that the half of Russia will be flooded and the other half of Russia will be burned. So as soon as it will happen, then hopefully the war
Eventually,
will
the Russians
stop.
are going. Yeah, the Russians are going to reach their threshold of pain, where the pain of the sacrifices they're being called upon to make is just too much for them to tolerate, and that is when we will have. That is an indirect effect, but Ukraine is doing exactly the right thing in attempting to inflict as much pain on the Russian homeland and rear areas as possible, to demonstrate to the Russian people and the Russian government that carrying on the war against Ukraine is not without a heavy price.
I'd like to mention being born in Ukraine, in Soviet Union. At that time, there were always some kind of a slogans are coming from time to time. For example, Khrushchev was claiming that by a year 1980, there will be finally a complete communism in Soviet Union. Sounds nice. Has it ever happened? No. Then there were people were talking about, okay, the life is difficult, the life is not getting any better. What's the most important thing? So our children will have a better life than we. So people kind of resign that there is nothing, excitement will happen in their life, but as long as children will have a happier life, okay, we agree to tolerate all that. Now, speaking about today's Russia, I just don't understand how people can swallow so heavy losses And there is no single slogan about that our children will have a better life, or some kind of communism or something else will be built eventually. There is nothing. There is a black hole. So what's the goal of the war? To kill their, as Putin said, our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. So you will kill them, and that's your goal. And now people will have in Russia a happy life by killing their brothers and sisters. How dare you are even think about it? But if not that, what else? What are they telling their people? I'm going from time to time through Russia.
Essentially, they're telling their people that nothing really matters.
Yeah, you're right. In a way, that's what they're saying.
That is Sasha. That is a classic nihilistic outlook. To a nihilist, nothing matters.
It's
and
a very
essentially that is the essence of Putin's message, or a variation of it. Nothing matters except my vision of a Russian empire.
You have to go back to nihilists, Bakunin and some others, that, basically. And this is, for Russian people, I don't get how they tolerate that. Russian people can tolerate a lot. They can survive in conditions that most Western people, they wouldn't be able to do it. Russians,
Well, that's why you get sayings from Russia like "life is hard, but fortunately short." Nobody else in the world says that.
yeah, there are a lot of aphorisms the Russians love. For example, it's
the modern
just a second. It's better to be healthy and wealthy than poor and sick. That's another thing what Russians love.
There was an aphorism from one of the old Soviet movies, like the life of a typical Russian is like you have stolen, you drank, and then go to the jail. And now, in the modern terms, you have drunk, you stolen, went to the jail, and after that you were liberated from the jail in order to go to the war, and then you died somewhere near Avdiivka or Bakhmut.
Okay,
Such a deal.
Many more stages before you finally died, the end of the story. But there are so many more stages now. That's incredible. I'm horrified, and I'm really going through some Russian sources trying to find any justification. And if you remember, at the beginning of the war, especially European politicians, they were talking about there has to be found a formula to finish this war and for Putin to save a face. Remember, that was almost every politician, especially in Europe, was praying to that. Now nobody's talking about anymore for Putin to save a face. No one in Europe or States anywhere. What do you think, Jonathan? What's changed?
What has changed is the fact that Russia's has been. I would say that Putin has essentially, in invading Ukraine and thinking that his nuclear arsenal would give him freedom of action and the leverage needed to achieve his objectives, Putin was essentially in the position of a poker player who is bluffing with a weak hand. He did not realize how weak a hand he really had until now. He overestimated the ability of the Russian military to carry out its objectives. He underestimated the reaction of the NATO alliance. It actually became stronger and expanded. And he greatly underestimated the ability of the Ukrainian people and military to resist successfully with the means that they had. And so, having made several mistakes on several levels, it is what has really changed is that the reality of the situation is now finally settling in the minds of the Russian military and political leadership. They are realizing that this is not the easy victory that they thought they were going to have. They are getting the same hard dose of reality that Hitler got when he invaded the Soviet Union.
Yeah. Well, you can say that Hitler also overestimated the strength of German army, although
He,
on my
yes, and no.
Actually, and Jonathan, I agree with you entirely, but I just wanted to add that now when Russia is totally in war, the only way for them to preserve their present state and to preserve the integrity of Russia and to keep the power of Putin and his gang of oligarchs is to continue the war. When Russians are saying that they need peace, that they're going, they are okay with negotiations and peace. You correctly saying they only need appeasement in order to prepare and continue this war, because as soon as war will stop, people in Russia will begin to ask questions. What this war was for? What our children, our relatives, our fellows died for? What we achieved in this war? Why the sanction? Why Russia is under sanctions? Why the level of our life is decreasing? Why we have to pay some reparations to Ukraine, etc., etc. And this will automatically means the end of the reign of Putin and his gang, because they will not have any answers to these questions. So it's a paradox, but continuing this war is the only way for Putin to survive, and losing in this war will definitely lead to the end of his power.
And and since that is the choice that it will be presented, it also leaves no choice for the West but to defeat Putin. Unless if you want, the Romans used to say, if you want peace, prepare for war.
absolutely.
And in this case, if you want a lasting peace, and your opponent is determined to carry on war, then that leaves you no choice but to decisively defeat your opponent, force him to see reality. And if that means defeating Russian armed forces, driving them out of Crimea, retaking Ukrainian territories back up to the pre-war Russian border, then so be it. The members of NATO, various members of the NATO alliance, have realized this, and they are individually making bilateral agreements with Ukraine to supply them and reinforce them. And they will be able to do, once the war is officially concluded with a Ukrainian victory, and that's the only realistic way it can conclude, then the job becomes not just winning the war, but winning the subsequent peace as well, by restoring Ukraine, building up its military, integrating them into NATO, integrating them into the European Union, so that they become a fully functional and prosperous member of Europe. And then Russia simply has to be contained. And as I pointed out on yesterday's program, the key to that is the establishment of a global ballistic missile defense system. And oh, by the way, I have to point out, the response of one of our panel members yesterday absolutely appalled me. I will not mention the person's name, but you know who it is.
I remember this.
The one who said that if even one nuclear weapon were to get through this defensive shield, it would result in the deaths of tens of thousands, as if this would be a world-ending disaster. So if he's saying that, if one nuclear weapon gets through our shield, that means that we shouldn't even bother to build the shield.
So 100 devices will hit us?
Yeah, exactly. So that was the most spineless, cowardly, and it's the type of response that the Russian leadership counts upon. They count upon the Western fear of nuclear escalation in any form, to any degree. They count upon that That's why they call their nuclear forces nuclear intimidation forces, ustrashenia.
I would like to mention that it was happened several months ago, maybe more than a year ago. The same person, when I confronted him with the Budapest Memorandum and what was the U.S. role in it, so he looked at me and says, well, Sasha, you should understand, the memorandum is a memorandum. If you wish to conform to the articles of memorandum, you are free to do so. But if you decided you don't want it, so you don't do it, and that's it. It's not a treaty. The treaty, then there would be some. I said, what about the morals? He said, yeah, the morals maybe not perfect, but who cares? Yeah, that's people that you have to do.
But you see, that's the kind of naive and ill-informed and ill-considered response that the Russian leadership counts upon to make their policies effective. They count upon fear. They count upon ignorance. They count upon fear and ignorance in their opponents to make them vulnerable to manipulation. If your opponent is not carefully studying you and seeing what you really fear, for example, as a result of my research, my decades of research and observation, I know what the Russians fear most. And what is why I recommend it in my writings, in my public declarations, and my hope is that the key listeners to this program will pick up on this, and that in the event that administration arrives as a result of the November elections, which is willing to listen to those types of responses, then we have a real opportunity to prevent a future war.
John, I totally agree with you. And Russian, they respect only strength of your opponents and power. They don't care about anything else. There is no morals. There is no humanistic considerations. Absolutely none.
It's like Churchill said: nothing the Russians respect more than strength, and nothing they despise more than weakness, especially military weakness.
Well, finally, we arrived at a very crucial moment in the history of this war. I think we will see results of this new weapons very soon, hopefully, maybe even starting next week.
Sense of urgency.
Yeah.
And
better late than never.
Yeah, exactly. Better to have the cavalry come over the hill just in the nick of time than never have them arrive at all.
Absolutely. And I would like to thank you both for today's program. Have a great week, and hopefully we'll see you Friday, same place.
Yes, you will.
Same time. Thank you very much. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.